My name's Nolan. I'm 35, and I guess you could say I've been the outsider in my family for as long as I can remember. Not because I wanted to be, but because that's how they made me feel growing up, like I was some distant cousin who never quite belonged at the table. I was the quiet one, the one who read books instead of gossiping in the kitchen, the one who moved away after college and didn't come home every holiday just to be ignored anyway. So when I landed a well-paying job in tech a few years ago, and I mean real money, not just can pay rent on time money, I thought, maybe, finally, they'd see me differently. Respect me. Or at the very least, treat me like a real member of the family. But that was wishful thinking. This story, it starts with my dad's retirement party, and it ends with something very different than what any of them expected. When I found out my dad was retiring after 40 years as a public school teacher, I genuinely wanted to do something meaningful. Despite everything, I still cared. I reached out to my sister, Erin, who still lived in our hometown, and offered to help plan something nice. She said she was already handling it and didn't need me involved. That was my first warning sign, but I brushed it off. A week later, I found out through a Facebook post that the venue had fallen through and the caterer they'd booked bailed last minute. So I stepped in. I called around, found a beautiful local vineyard that had an opening, and hired a full-service caterer who could do a customized menu for my dad's favorite dishes. Comfort food with a classy twist. I paid for everything up front without asking for a dime back. I even booked a private flight so I could fly in last minute and surprise him, since I was working long hours up until the week of the party. The day of the event, everything looked perfect. The tables were covered in navy and gold linens, my dad's old school colors, with framed photos of him from his early teaching days to now. Everyone from his old colleagues to students and neighbors was there. People smiled when I walked in, hugged me politely. A few even said they were glad I came. But not Erin. She spotted me from across the patio and rolled her eyes like I'd just stepped in something. I told myself to ignore it. She'd always had that bitter edge, even as kids. Maybe she resented that I left, or that I was doing well now. I never really understood it. She was the golden child for most of our childhood. The one who never got in trouble, who went to state for gymnastics, who everyone said had the real potential. I guess that changed when I moved out and started building a life of my own. A quiet life, but a good one. Anyway, the evening moved along fine for a while. People laughed, clinked glasses, took photos. I even caught my dad smiling, genuinely happy, which warmed something in me I didn't expect. Toward the end, they had an open mic set up, and people began taking turns saying a few words. Former students talked about how much he changed their lives. His old co-workers told funny stories about the school years, the staff room politics, the snow days. It was honestly really heartwarming. And then someone, I think one of Erin's friends, gestured toward me and said, "You flew all the way in for this, right? You should say something too." I stood, a little surprised, but I'd been thinking about what I might say anyway. I wasn't going to give a big speech, just a short thank you, maybe a memory or two. I walked up to the mic, smiled, and started with, "I just wanted to say." That's when Erin stood up from her chair and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You don't get to pretend you're part of this family just because you have money now." She had a glass of wine in her hand, her voice smug and biting. The whole place fell quiet, just a few uncomfortable chuckles from people who didn't know what to do with themselves. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe she was joking. But she kept going. "You disappear for 10 years, barely show up to anything, and now you want to play the hero? Just sit down, Nolan." Everyone stared at me. Some looked down at their plates. No one said anything. Not even my dad. He just sat there, chewing slowly, like none of it was happening. And that, somehow, hit harder than Erin's words. He didn't defend me, didn't stop her, didn't even flinch. I nodded, smiled faintly, and walked back to my seat. The mic stood there for a moment, still live, buzzing with silence. I didn't speak again that night, but I didn't leave either. I stayed through the cake cutting, the group photos, the part where Erin gave her speech and called herself the one who really knew Dad best. I smiled. I clapped politely. And while everyone was distracted, I quietly stepped away, pulled out my phone, and opened the email draft I had saved from the night before, the one I'd written but hadn't sent yet. See, this wasn't just a retirement party for my dad. It was also supposed to be the day I surprised him and Erin with the keys to the house I'd bought, a renovated Craftsman 3 blocks from Erin's place. big enough for them to grow old in without worrying about maintenance or stairs. I'd already met with the realtor, had the paperwork ready to sign. It was a gift, one I didn't have to give, but wanted to. Even after all the times they made me feel like a stranger. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment things changed. Instead, I hit send. The email went to the realtor, the title company, and the mortgage broker. Please withdraw the current offer. I will not be moving forward with this purchase. Apologies for the inconvenience. Just like that, the house was off the table. But that was only step one. Because as much as I wanted to let it go and chalk it up to another slap in the face, something in me cracked that night. Something I'd spent years trying to patch over. I started noticing the pattern I'd always ignored. The little comments. The silent treatment. The way Aaron would always say, well, Nolan's not really around, so he wouldn't understand. Or how my dad stopped calling years ago, but still posted Facebook pictures of him and Aaron's kids every week. I realized I was always giving, always trying, and they were always taking, then resenting me for it. And suddenly, I was done pretending I didn't see it. They thought they'd embarrassed me, that I'd sit back, feel ashamed, and disappear again. But what they didn't know was that while they were toasting to my absence, I was already thinking 10 steps ahead. Because I wasn't just going to cancel the house. I was going to pull back every single thing I'd ever quietly given. Every trust fund, every tuition supplement, every silent gift that kept the lights on when Aaron's husband lost his job last year. I had receipts. Literal ones. And the day after the party, I started making calls. But I'll get to that. Because what happened next, just a week later, was the moment the first domino fell. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a phone call. A letter printed on thick, expensive paper, mailed to my father's house. I wrote it with calm, measured words. No anger, no drama. Just facts. I thanked him for the retirement party and mentioned how nice it was to see so many people who had been part of his life. Then I explained that I had decided to withdraw my offer on the new house, as it no longer felt right to invest in something for a family that clearly did not consider me part of it. I ended it with a line that I had thought long and hard about. You once told me a man's worth is shown in how he treats people when no one's watching. That night, when everyone laughed and you stayed silent, I finally understood what I meant to you. I mailed it the morning after the party. The next step was the education fund I had quietly started for Erin's 2 kids. When her husband was laid off the previous year, they panicked about finances. Erin had called me, voice cracking, saying she didn't know how they were going to keep up with mortgage payments, school fees, piano lessons, the whole suburban dream she was so desperate to preserve. I'd offered to help, under one condition: it would be between us. No announcements, no family gossip. I'd set up a 529 plan under my name with her as the guardian, and I'd been contributing monthly. I called the financial advisor and had the contributions frozen that same week. I didn't touch what was already in the account. I'm not that cruel. But the auto deposit stopped. The projected growth? Gone. And I didn't say a word. I just let the silence sit. 3 days later, I got a text from Erin. Erin, hey, just got a weird email about the boys' college fund. Did something happen with the bank? I didn't respond. I just hearted the message and left it at that. She followed up with a voice note. Her tone not angry yet, but probing. Erin, voice Nolan. I don't know what's going on, but if this is about the other night, I think you're being a little sensitive. We were just joking. Can we talk? No, we couldn't. Because here's what people like Erin never realize. Every joke has a root. And sometimes, that root is rot. A few days after that, I logged into the old family group chat for the first time in nearly a year. The one I'd muted after getting bombarded with photos of Erin's kids' school plays and zero acknowledgement when I landed a major promotion. I typed a single message. Me. Hey, just a heads up, I'm reviewing some of the financial gifts and support I've provided over the years. If anyone has questions, now's the time to ask. You'd think I'd dropped a live grenade in the group chat. Responses flew in. Dad. Nolan, what is this about? Erin. Wait, what support? Aunt Lisa. Is something wrong, sweetheart? Mom, finally chiming in, we don't appreciate threats. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded every document I had to each of them individually. The Venmo history, the tuition receipts, the mortgage check from 2 years ago when Erin and her husband almost lost the house. Every quiet act of help they'd conveniently forgotten. Still no reply. Until that Sunday, I got a call from my dad. I stared at the screen for a long time before I picked up. "Hey," I said flatly. There was a pause. Then his voice, slow and careful. "Nolan, can we talk? I think this has all gone too far." "You mean the part where your daughter humiliated me and you let her?" I said. "Or the part where I decided I'm done being treated like a wallet with a pulse?" I didn't laugh, he said defensively. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make a scene. I exhaled. "You didn't say anything because you didn't care enough to." That shut him up. I waited. "Finally," he said, I thought. I thought you were giving us that house because you wanted to." I was. "But wanting to doesn't mean I'll keep letting you treat me like a stranger who owes you something." There was silence. Then, the part that stung more than I expected. "We didn't ask you to do any of that." And there it was. The unspoken truth. The moment everything I had ever done for them was brushed aside. Not just ignored, but invalidated. I hung up. No yelling. No closure. Just a quiet click. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat by the window of my apartment, and stared out at the skyline. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was awake. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. But the fallout was only just beginning. Because Erin had one more secret she thought I didn't know. And I was about to make sure everyone found out. The secret wasn't exactly well hidden. Erin had always been careless with her digital footprint. A few months before the retirement party, she'd reached out in a panic. Her husband had lost his job, again. This time it wasn't a layoff. He'd been quietly let go for behavioral issues. She never gave details, but she'd begged me not to tell anyone. "Dad would be humiliated if people knew," she'd said, her voice brittle. "Please, Nolan, just keep it between us." I did. I kept it tucked away, like so many other things. But now that she'd gone out of her way to shame me in front of my entire family and dozens of guests, I stopped feeling bound by the loyalty she never showed me in return. The truth? Her husband, Scott, hadn't just been fired. He'd been caught inappropriately messaging a 19-year-old intern at his office. It was all swept under the rug, no police involved. But the company's HR report had been damning enough that they'd issued a mutual separation agreement to avoid legal risk. I knew this because Scott had, in a moment of foolishness, forwarded me the report when begging for help with rent. I'd helped, of course, because at the time, I thought I was doing it for the kids. Not for him. Not for Erin. I pulled the file from my cloud archive and opened it slowly. There it was, right at the top. Voluntary separation, conduct concerns. Attached were screenshots. Redacted, yes, but the timeline was enough to raise eyebrows for anyone who looked. Erin had known. She'd even written a letter to the company on his behalf, vouching for his character. I had that too. And the kicker? They'd used the money I gave them not just for rent, but to book a vacation to Maui a month later. I only found out because Erin posted a throwback photo from the trip on her Instagram, captioned, "Earned this break after the year we've had," just days after our talk about barely affording groceries. I kept it all, and now I started organizing it. I wasn't interested in shaming her publicly, not yet. But I was tired of being the scapegoat. Tired of sitting at family gatherings while she wore a smug grin, while Dad praised her for being the strong one, while I was treated like some walking ATM that needed to earn my spot at the table. I called a lawyer, not for legal action, but to understand what I could share and how, if things escalated. I wasn't planning to go nuclear unless they forced my hand, but I wanted to be ready, and they were making it very easy. Because a week after I froze the college fund and withdrew the house offer, I got another group message, this time from my mom. "Mom, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't how family behaves. Erin says you're trying to sabotage her life. We've always supported you. Why are you turning against us now?" The irony nearly made me laugh. Supported me? They forgot birthdays. They skipped my graduation. They never visited me once in the city I moved to. My success had always been this uncomfortable thing they didn't want to talk about. Too far from their small-town sensibilities, too alien to their worldview. I was the bougie brother, the uptight one, the one who left and got ideas. But I didn't respond. I just waited. Because while they were stirring drama in group texts and telling extended family that I'd changed, I had begun the slow, careful process of reclaiming every bit of leverage I'd quietly handed them over the years. Like the cabin. Back when our grandfather passed away, he'd left a modest lakeside cabin to be shared equally among the siblings. Erin had cried, said she couldn't afford the upkeep, and begged me to take it over in full. So I bought her half out legally. She used the money to redo her kitchen, but the family kept calling it Erin's cabin. Even hosted family barbecues there without inviting me. I never complained. I figured, let them enjoy it. That was then. Now, I filed a notice to the HOA revoking access to anyone not on the deed, which meant Erin. I scheduled an inspection. Then I scheduled a full rekeying of the locks. A simple matter. Quiet. Clean. I didn't announce it. I just let it happen. It took exactly 2 weeks for Erin to notice. Erin texted, "What is this, Nolan? Why can't we get into the cabin? I had plans this weekend." I replied, "Not your cabin anymore. Haven't been for 3 years. Check the paperwork." She tried to bluff, threatened to call a lawyer, accused me of being vindictive and immature. I sent her a PDF of the title transfer with her signature. Then I blocked her number. Things got quieter after that, but only for a while. Because then came Dad's birthday, a month after his retirement party. I didn't call, didn't send a gift, didn't even text. That silence must have hit harder than anything I'd done so far. I knew it did, because I got a voicemail from him the next morning, his voice tired, hollow. "Nolan, I know we haven't always gotten along, but this is going too far. Family sticks together. Please don't let this be permanent." Funny how silence only hurts when you're used to being heard. I didn't delete the voicemail. I just sat with it. Because for once, they were the ones trying to make sense of a version of me they couldn't control. But none of them, had any idea what was coming next. Because Erin had been hiding something far more explosive. And the person who exposed it to me wasn't a stranger. It was someone from inside the family. And when they reached out, what they told me changed everything. It was my cousin Jacob who reached out. We weren't especially close growing up. Jacob was a few years younger, always the quiet one at family events, buried in his camera or a sketch pad while everyone else was comparing careers, marriages, or which child got the most ass. But Jacob saw things, noticed things, and he was the kind of person who remembered everything people assumed he'd forget. He messaged me one evening, totally out of the blue. Jacob texted, "Hey, don't know if this is weird, but I've been watching all the family drama from a distance. Thought you should know something about Erin. I've got receipts." That caught my attention. We hopped on a call. He sounded nervous, not out of fear, but because he clearly wasn't used to being in the middle of anything, let alone this. He told me he used to work freelance for a private accounting firm that helped small businesses organize their finances, mostly dental offices, bakeries, that sort of thing. 2 years ago, Erin asked him to help clean up the books for a small nonprofit she was treasurer of, something called Books for Every Home, a literacy initiative her PDA had launched. She said it was volunteer work, Jacob explained, but there were a lot of missing receipts, a lot of weird withdrawals. I asked about it. She told me not to worry, said it was all above board. But, Nolan, I went back and looked again recently. You need to see this. He sent me a folder. Inside were spreadsheets, PDF statements, and a photo of a check Erin had written from the nonprofit's account to herself. $6,000. Labeled as child care reimbursement. Jacob's voice dropped. I didn't say anything back then because, honestly, I didn't want to start drama. But now, seeing how she's treated you, I can't stay silent. That $6,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few days, Jacob helped me trace nearly $18,000 in unaccounted expenses, vague admin fees, payments to consultants with no last name, and Amazon orders labeled as supplies that went to her home address. I cross-referenced a few of the order confirmations with Erin's Pinterest page. She'd posted pictures of her new patio furniture around the same time the purchases were made. It wasn't just shady. It was illegal. I sat with the information for 2 days. I didn't know what I wanted yet. Revenge? Maybe. But more than that, I wanted the truth out in the open. I wanted the story to write itself, not through my words, but through her actions finally being held to the light. So I took my hands off the wheel. I sent the entire folder to the nonprofit's current board chair, a woman named Valerie, who had no idea Erin had ever been involved. She responded within 2 hours. "Valerie, this is serious. Thank you for sharing this. We'll be handling it immediately." Within 48 hours, a formal audit was launched. Erin received a notice from the board, requesting clarification and supporting documents for every expense she'd submitted during her time as treasurer. She didn't respond. She ghosted them, which only made them dig deeper. By the end of the week, I was told the board had voted unanimously to report the discrepancies to the state's Charity Oversight Commission. It didn't take long after that. 3 weeks later, the story broke in the local paper. Former PDA treasurer under investigation for misappropriation of funds. The article didn't name her at first, but the comments section? Oh, they knew. People from town started connecting the dots fast. Former parents from the school, volunteers from past events, all began chiming in. She always seemed shady. Didn't she buy a hot tub last year? I remember asking where the money went when they canceled the reading fair. My mom tried to downplay it at first. It's just a misunderstanding, she said in the family group chat. They're blowing things out of proportion. But the screenshot said otherwise. And then, just when I thought it was over, I got a call from the bank that managed the kids' college fund. Turns out, Erin had attempted to transfer what remained of the $529 into a different account, one under her name. Without my consent, she tried to claim I had abandoned it. The advisor flagged it as suspicious and called me immediately. That's when I snapped. I scheduled a Zoom call with my lawyer, the financial advisor, and the fund manager. We updated the beneficiary, transferred the remaining funds into a private trust, one that Erin would have no access to. The kids would still receive the money when they turned 18, but only if they applied themselves, and only if they wanted nothing to do with her. I added a clause. If either child allowed their parents to access the funds before age 18, it would revert to a scholarship donation. Petty? Maybe, but fair. I thought that would be the end of it. But Erin wasn't done. She showed up at my apartment. It was early evening. I'd just gotten back from a jog. I opened the door, and there she was. Arms crossed, sunglasses still on, like she was preparing for battle. You had no right, she said, without even a hello. I didn't move. No right to what? To stop you from stealing from a charity? Or from your kids? Her jaw tightened. You think you're some hero? You've been punishing us for years, Nolan, just because we didn't fawn over you. I laughed. No, I've been helping you for years. Silently. And you spat on every bit of it. She started to speak, but I cut her off. You humiliated me in front of Dad. You mocked me in front of strangers. And now, you're trying to play victim? I was angry, she snapped. You come in with your money and your smug attitude like you're better than the rest of us. You always have. And yet you never had a problem taking my money, did you? She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked away. I stepped aside and pointed to the elevator. You should leave. I just wanted to. No, I said, calm but firm. You wanted to win. But this isn't a game. This is your life unraveling, Erin. And for once, I'm not going to be the one holding it together for you. She walked out without another word. And just like that, the door, both literal and metaphorical, closed between us. The fallout was swift. The nonprofit filed formal charges with the state. Erin lost her job at the real estate agency she worked for. Bad press travels fast in small towns. Her husband tried to spin it as cancel culture, but no one listened. People started distancing themselves. The family, at first divided, gradually went silent. Nobody wanted to be associated with the mess. Dad called again. This time I picked up. I didn't know, he said. I know, I replied. I should have stood up for you. That night, there was a long pause. I just wanted one night without drama, he added. But I see now, you've been carrying the weight for a long time. Yeah, I said. I have. He cleared his throat. I read your letter again. The one you sent after the party. I cried. I didn't know what to say. I didn't expect that. We failed you, Nolan. I failed you. It was the first time he'd ever said something like that. I didn't know if it changed everything, but it was a start. In the months that followed, I kept my distance. The family dynamic had shifted permanently. Erin and her husband moved 2 towns over. I heard from Jacob now and then. We even met for lunch once. He told me he'd started journaling again. Said watching all of this unfold reminded him that telling the truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. And me? I felt free. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a shadow trying to earn his place at the table. I knew who I was, what I'd given, what I was no longer willing to tolerate. Some people will hear this story and think I went too far. Others might think I didn't go far enough. But to me, this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my voice. Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's the strongest thing you'll ever do. And sometimes, silence, your silence, is the loudest truth they'll ever hear.